Procrastination is a common pitfall that many PhD students face when it comes to their academic endeavors. They often find themselves immersed, or should I say, purposely distracting themselves with data collection, experiments, and literature reviews, all in the hopes of putting off the actual writing of the thesis. This is a terrible strategy for any PhD student, and you should instead start writing your thesis early because that gives you an abundance of time. This is something I realized early in my PhD journey, thanks to my amazing supervisors encouraging me to start writing my thesis early. It gave me the best chance to pace myself as I was writing my thesis, although I did end up burning out at one point, but that does not take away from the importance of starting early. And I also covered the reasons behind my burnout in a previous video anyway. In addition to the abundance of time, starting early allows you to go through multiple drafts, seek feedback from your supervisors, and make the necessary improvements and changes based on their suggestions. You also have more time to prioritize writing tasks to ensure that you avoid the pressures of last-minute deadlines, which means no more last-minute rushes and also no more pulling all-nighters, which, I mean, every student, PhD or not, knows is not great, right? Let's just be honest, we've all been there. The result of this is that you get to maintain a healthy work-life balance and have a higher probability of preventing burnout, all whilst striving for academic excellence. Additionally, life is full of unexpected challenges, and the honest truth is the thesis writing journey is no exception to that. Starting early provides you with a buffer that you can use to deal with unforeseen circumstances, such as experiments not yielding expected results, or desirable results, I should say, data collection taking longer than expected, or personal life circumstances impacting your progress. For example, you fall ill, or a loved one falls ill, and that leads to you not focusing on your thesis for a period of time because either you're on the mend if it's you who's ill, or you're looking after your loved ones and caring for them, whatever that might look like. By giving yourself a head start, you can navigate these challenges more effectively without compromising the quality or delaying the completion of your thesis, because Lord knows at one point or another you're gonna want to be done with that thing, and yeah, it's just one of those feelings. In my case, I started referring to my thesis as the hellish nightmare, and many people, including my supervisors, told me I was being overly dramatic, but I really wasn't. I was just done, and I wanted it out of my life. But yeah, I'm not gonna start venting about that in this video. Let's just stay focused. Eye on the prize. I urge you to start writing your thesis by the start of your third year. Now, if you can do it sooner, like before that, go ahead, do it. But your third year is a good time to start, and this is because you have a decent amount of content to put into your thesis at that point, between the literature reviews you would have carried out to that point, because you're most likely going to have to carry out some more literature review in your fourth year, but that doesn't matter. You have enough literature review at that point. The experiments you would have carried out to that point, along with the results yielded by those experiments, as well as your conclusions from evaluating those results, will be plenty of content for you to put into your thesis. By your third year, you would have done a ton of experiments, so there'll be plenty of content there. As for the methodology chapter in the thesis, you need to include the research methods you'd have used up to that point, and of course that's always customized to your specific research that you're doing. So I can't tell you what research methods to put into your methodology chapter, or anything like that. However, there is one, I dare say, common research method that I'm going to go out on a limb and say is common across either all PhDs or most PhDs. And that is the descriptive research method, which is incorporated into your research by virtue of you carrying out the literature review. And you can say that in your thesis. I mean, I did. To give a quick summarized definition of what the descriptive research method is, given I've mentioned it by name in this video, it's a research method that focuses on describing the current state of a research space, but doesn't provide any context or information as to why that research space is in that particular state. That's where you come in with your little piece of the puzzle that justifies the relevance of your research and its novelty, because the entire purpose of doing a literature review is to identify a gap in knowledge and then saying my research plugs this gap in knowledge. So that's why, in some ways you get to, I guess, I say sell or justify the current, why the research space is in that current state, as your way of saying something's missing and this is why my research exists. This is why I'm pursuing this research, because there's this gap that's missing and I'm here to plug it. And that's why my research is important, why it's relevant, and why, you guys should give me a PhD at the end of, 4 or so years, Earlier on, whilst I was planning out this video, I considered advising you to start writing your thesis in your first year, and continuously grow the document that will end up being the final kind of thesis over time. But then I remembered that when you start your PhD in your first year, you're a fish out of water. You're trying to figure out this whole PhD thing, and you're overwhelmed with the whole PhD kind of environment. It's a bit silly of me to expect you to start writing a thesis that early, because you can't even fathom like tomorrow or like next week at that moment in time. So yeah, it would have been unrealistic and unfair and completely silly for me to say that. So it's one of the reasons why I said earlier you should start writing your thesis at the beginning of your third year. Another reason I suggest that you start writing your thesis in your third year is because by that time you've been riding the dragon for a while. Like you're comfortable enough in the PhD environment, the PhD world, and you have a proper understanding of your research, where you're trying to go with it, where what you're trying to achieve with it. It's a bit more clearer. So you're definitely in a better position to start your PhD, to start writing your thesis, and it gives you what, if you're a full-time, it gives you at least 2 years to write your thesis, because you have like third year and fourth year. If you're a part-timer like I was, if you say in your third year, because it's the maximum of 6 years, or you can finish earlier, you can have up to 3 years writing your thesis. Just think about that, a 3-year thesis process, which could be cut down if you are that eager for it. But if anything kind of stresses you out, you burn out or whatever, still got time. That abundance of time that I mentioned earlier, is still there. Something else I wanted to add is that a typical full-time PhD is about 4 years, maybe 5 if you're lucky, if you get like an extension, but usually it's 4 years in length. And a part-time PhD is roughly 6 to 8 years, depending on the university you're studying at and the country in which you're studying in. So when I'm urging you guys to start writing your thesis in your third year, as you can see, based on either one, whether you're full-time or part-time, you got plenty of time to really craft that bad boy into your magnum opus, your crowning jewel, and make it the very best you can make it, to make sure it's a top quality thesis that will get you the PhD at the end of the day. Because you don't want to go through this four plus years of study and then get to the end and it's like, you failed. You don't want that. Even though I'm encouraging you to start writing your thesis in your third year, from the day you start your PhD, you start researching your PhD, I strongly suggest that you start recording and writing down every piece of literature that you read in relation to your PhD. This includes your thoughts on the literature you're reading and its relevancy to your PhD, because there are times when you're going to include literature in your literature review that doesn't have anything to do with your direct research space, in a direct manner. It's more indirect, but it's more maybe a method they use that you're intrigued by, and that's why you associate it. So hence why I'm saying this. But again, you don't want to do this last minute, or should I say in your third year when you're trying to write the thesis, because you forget half the things if you didn't record it down, because so many things are going to be in your brain, and a bunch of other insecurities, concerns, worries, whatever, doubts, stresses, pressures, life basically. So it's better to just write it all down from day one, and then when the time comes, you can pick and choose what to include in the thesis and what not to. It's far easier because the upfront cost of doing the work has been done. Basically, I'm saying front load the work so that in your third year you're more picking and choosing and reshaping things as you go, which is a better position to be in, believe me. Also record all the experiments that you conduct and the results that are yielded by those experiments, as well as the conclusions that you draw from analyzing and evaluating those results in great detail. Based on the results that are yielded by your experiments and the conclusions you draw from analyzing those, or should I say evaluating those results, plus new information that you're gonna inevitably come across as you read more and more literature throughout your PhD journey, you're gonna make pivots in your research, and the decisions and reasons that lead to those pivots are good to have in your thesis. Examiners love to read about the pivots that you made in your research and the reasons behind it, because it breathes life into your research and transforms it into a living entity, instead of it being a linear, boring, and mundane PhD journey. Also, the examiners are really smart people. Don't forget that they are experts in your field of study, and they've examined multiple different PhDs over the last 10 plus years. So they know that a PhD is never linear. It is a lot of twists and turns, failures and successes, and they want to see it and read it all in your thesis, because they know you didn't get to the final outcome in one shot. You didn't just go, day one, I know what I'm gonna do, boom, I'm at the finish line, guys. 4 years later or 6 years later, I'm at the finishing line, we're all good, I'm amazing, etc. They know that's just nonsense. They know at one point what was originally your research idea probably changed, morphed, transformed, pivoted a few times, and then there's reasons behind it, maybe that are based on evidence you collected along the way. And so they want to read all of that in your thesis. Don't be afraid to write about the failures that you had, even if it's like experiments that didn't yield the good results or ideal results. Even if they were horrendous, record them, show them in your thesis. It's very important. I should also add that having a lot of failure stories, if you will, and success stories in your thesis, as part of the journey that got you to the end game, to the finishing line, if you will, is really good for your PhD viva, because it will spark a lot of interesting discussions that are very good for the viva experience. And believe me, I know, because I was initially hesitant about writing failed experiments and pathways I went down that weren't ideal and didn't help me at all, were almost damn near a waste of time. But I did put them in my thesis, and it was worth it, because even the examiners said, we really like the fact that you added these tangents you went on, because they asked me about the tangents initially. I should say they asked me about the tangents, why I went down those tangents, because it's in the thesis they're gonna ask, and I explained why. Some of it was just experimental based on a few papers I'd read, some and all those things. As long as you justify why you went down tangent and there's evidence behind it that you can use, i.e., I read a few papers around this little pathway, so I took it because I was interested to see how my research would pan out. Hey, I got some good results, I got some negative results, whatever. But nonetheless, they liked the fact that I went down these pathways. I had reasons for doing it, and even though most of them didn't pan out, they asked me how did I deal with that failure. And then what was it like then pivoting back and knowing that you might have wasted 6 months going down this path. And it was really just a great back and forth discussion. It wasn't even like an interrogation. They were also fascinated to know how I dealt with these losses, these failures, and how I bounced back, how I felt about them, and what I think about it looking back. Would I have gone down the same paths looking back, from the position of of when you've finished your thesis and submitted it, because you're doing your Viva, right? They asked all these questions, and I found it very intriguing, man. I enjoyed it. It actually made my Viva very, very good, and it wasn't an interrogation, because I thought it was going to be an interrogation through and through, and it turned out to just be a great discussion, because there were so many points that we discussed, and they even provided pointers of how those pathways I went down, the tangents that didn't work out, how I might have been able to improve upon them. Or did you think about this? Did you think about that? Perhaps if you had maybe merged this strategy with this, you never know. And that was brilliant time, because it also meant that this is potential future work I can pursue if I choose to down the line, right? So yeah, it was brilliant, and I urge you guys to add all these failures and successes, add all of it into your thesis. It's well worth it, believe me. I kind of went on a bit of a rant there for a minute, but the reason I kind of segued into that little I guess rant, if we're going to call it that, is because I was trying to highlight the importance of recording all your pivots and the reasons behind them and putting them in your thesis, because there is a lot of value in them. So I hope I made it clearly apparent why you need to record all these different pivots you're going to do, and carry them forward. To wrap up this segment of the video, I just wanted to highlight the fact that even though you're going to start writing your thesis early, like in your third year, like I suggested, please follow that suggestion, please. When you do start writing your thesis, it's still going to be an overwhelming experience, hence I want you to have way more time, because this will be the first time you're writing an academic document of this magnitude, right? Because I just want to put out that the thesis is going to be at least 150 pages to 200 pages ish, somewhere in there. And up to this point in your academic career or life, you haven't really had to write such a document. Let's just be honest, right? Unless you're doing something, I don't know, maybe you did a research master's, but even then, I don't think you have to ball out on 200 pages of a dissertation for your master's. But I don't know. You can let me know in the comments on that one. But anyway, you're doing this for the first time, right? Writing a thesis, and it's going to be a struggle just to wrap that in your head, and so it's going to be overwhelming, and you're going to have a lot of doubts. Do I have enough information? Is it clear enough? Did I record everything? Is there anything I forgot? Did I justify everything? Do I have all the references to all my citations, etc.? You're going to have all these things kind of coming through your mind, but remember that by your third year, you've got plenty of content that you've generated along the way. Plenty of information. I shouldn't call it content, more information, but you get my point. And the good thing about starting your PhD but so writing your thesis early as well, whilst you have all this information, is you spend a decent amount of the first half of writing your thesis simply copying and pasting the information from whatever document you've been storing it in to your thesis, and then arranging the information to make sure that it's in the right chapters, in the right format, and that it tells a coherent story, essentially. And that will be a lot easier than trying to write from scratch everything as a starting point, because trust me, you don't want to be trying to remember, what did I do in my first year again? What did I do in my second year? Yeah, you don't want to be doing that because you won't remember everything. So it's better to just have it all written. Sorry guys, my nose is itchy. It's better to have it all written prior to sort of engaging in the thesis. That way it's more of a, let me just plug this information in and then edit it as necessary to kind of tie it all together with the rest of the document, so it tells a coherent story. To ensure that you end up with a well-crafted thesis, there will be moments where you have to rewrite entire paragraphs so that everything ties in together, like I said before, because initially you might have been writing these things quite separated, because you're running different experiments, different literature reviews, etc. So it might be all separate and there's no cohesion, and this rewriting of paragraphs is more about cohesion. But don't think of a rewrite as starting from scratch. It might be the same words, but you're just morphing them to tell the story of your PhD journey from a slightly different angle, so it just ties into maybe the information around it. And that will be like a small piece of work, all things considered. Don't get me wrong, some of these things might take time, but it will still be a small piece of work because the heavy lifting would have been done prior when you recorded all this information. So yeah, I didn't want to make it sound like you start early and you're just going to have a clean run in your thesis writing, because honestly that's not the case. The entire PhD, like I said, it's twists and turns, man. There's a famous English term for this. It's like swings and roundabouts. So it's swings and roundabouts. So yeah, I just want you to know that that's there, but it's not a big deal. It's all part of the process. The important thing is to start early and have the information ready to go, and then you'll be in a good position. Initiating the writing process early means that you have the opportunity to refine your arguments and your ideas, strengthen your methodology, because that's a big part of the whole PhD kind of shindig, and you also be able to enhance the overall coherency of your work. This is the kind of iterative approach that leads to a more polished and impactful thesis. You also open up avenues for critical feedback and constructive discussions with your supervisors. This early feedback loop is crucial to refining your ideas, making your research more robust, and making your thesis an academic masterpiece, which is really what you want at the end of the day. Another thing to add regarding the importance of starting to write your thesis early is the fact that it opens up the door to a world of possibilities. This early phase allows you to dive deeper into your research, explore various angles, and uncover hidden gems of insights that enable you to gain a comprehensive understanding of the research space. It's important to remember that PhD research is all about making a meaningful contribution to your field of study, and giving your ideas time to flourish will only lead to a more impactful thesis. Writing a thesis is a challenging endeavor, like I've mentioned earlier in the video, and one of the biggest issues you're going to have to deal with is writer's block, which is the bane of every scholar's existence. The good news is, starting early is the ultimate antidote to this creative hurdle, because you have the time and freedom to think creatively, experiment, revise, and let your ideas evolve naturally as you write your thesis, ensuring that you maintain a consistent writing flow. There's this old saying, or I guess it's an old saying, that states that opportunities present themselves to those who are prepared for them. An early start to your thesis means that you can publish your research and present it at conferences a lot earlier, which can open up opportunities that involve collaborating with experts in your field. And that's a big deal for any researcher. By being proactive, you position yourself as an authority in your field, which enables you to attract the right connections and opportunities, all while making a significant impact in the academic world. So, to my fellow PhD students out there, starting your thesis writing process early is not just a good idea. It's a game-changing strategy that empowers you to craft a masterpiece that reflects your expertise and dedication to advancing knowledge. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next video with more insights on PhDs and the world of academia. Keep shining and keep learning. Signing out.